Hello, everybody. Tarok37 here, and welcome to my latest obsession. Um, so, recently, Edge Studios published the Arkham Horror RPG. Um, and if you don't know Arkham Horror, it is based off of H.P. Lovecraft's works. He's the one who wrote Call of Cthulhu, and a lot of his stuff either makes reference to or is based in the town of Arkham in Massachusetts, a fictional town as far as I'm aware. Um, and if you know, there's already a Call of Cthulhu game out there. This is different. This is published by Edge instead of Chaosium. What you're looking at here is the form-fillable character sheet created by Drainsmith. If you don't know who Drainsmith is, he has made quite a few Genesis aids for players, for GMs, all sorts of things like that for Genesis, also published by Edge Studios currently. And I found out today, just checking, after last time I checked, for a form-fillable character sheet, and what do you know, Drainsmith has done that for this game. So, what I thought I'd do is I would kind of go over character creation in Arkham Horror and kind of explain what I find interesting about the character creation process, as well as the just the system in general. Starting with the dice. So, you see you have 6 dice here. Boop, boop. And I'm learning as I go. So, you have this dice pool here of 6. You have an insight, you have skills, you have knacks, which are basically talents, you have personality trait with a positive and a negative. Down here you have your background information, you can put your image for your character up here, supernatural resources like tomes and relics and various eldritch debts and favors, mundane resources. You will notice there is no health. This is your health. Your dice pool up here, the dice pool maximum, which is 6. Your health is equal to your dice pool. I think it's actually called a limit. I think there's a difference between maximum and limit. The maximum stays static at 6, but the limit changes based off of health. That's how I've been reading it. So, as you take damage, the amount of dice available in your pool starts to go down. So, no more dice here. You have taken a wound, and now you will only have 5 dice available in your pool. If you take 2 more damage, you've only got 3 dice. You run out of dice, your character is incapacitated or unconscious. There are injuries that can kill your character or cause various other things to happen. This will turn it into a horror die. The horror dice you have to fill in first. But essentially, whenever you refill your pool, you have to first fill in the number of horror dice. So I find that very interesting, and on top of that, these dice are your actions. An action can take a minor action. You don't roll the die, you just take a die away, like if I want to run into cover, or do something more minor, I just say, well, I'm going to take a die away. Now, you can roll 2 dice for some of these things, 3 dice. But if you do that, you are taking away dice that could be used for certain other things. You can hold dice back for reactions. So you could say, let's say you've spent 4 of your dice on attacks and movement. You've got 2 dice left, and you decide, I'm going to end my turn here. Now you have 2 reactions, basically. You can dodge. You can block. You only use 1 die each. You only roll 1 die. If you succeed, Hey, you dodged. Hey, you blocked. That is me. That has been kind of my that is kind of my interpretation. So yeah, that has been my big interest in this, is this dice pool mechanic, which I think it's implied to me that this is going to be their new dice system for new yeah, they call it the dynamic pool system, which I find to be a fascinating system here, because it makes you, like, there's not really a battle map system or anything, like there's no like movement speed or anything here. You don't need to like track inches or squares or hexes or anything like that. But you need to be strategic in how you're using these dice, because the more dice you have, the greater chance you're going to have of succeeding at whatever you're trying to do. So you're going to be wanting to avoid damage, but you also want to be constantly doing stuff, because in a war of attrition with creatures, you might need more. So, over here you have the skills. This is essentially what you need to roll on the die for it to be considered a success. So, if you roll a 6 on a die, that's a success. Doesn't matter what your skill is, doesn't matter anything else. If you roll a 6 on a die, you have a success. On here, if you, let's say I had like a 4+ in agility, that would probably be my dodge. If I roll my die, I need to roll a 4, a 5, or a 6. So I have a 50% chance on my reaction to not take damage from a shotgun blast or something. So, next up is, let me see if I can, sorry, I'm scrolling through on a separate device because I do not want to show it, because I don't want to violate copyright or anything like that, and I do think that if this sounds interesting to you, I do recommend picking up the game. I don't get sponsored. I don't really want to be sponsored. I would just like to just buy these books and be like, hey, this seems like a cool idea. But let me find the section on insight. Let's see here. Insight. Where is insight? Sorry, taking me a little bit to find insight on this device. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so this is unique to player characters. Player characters are the ones with insight, as far as I know. At the beginning of each game session, you gain enough insight to increase your total to equal your insight limit, which starts at actually a 1. So this needs to go to a 1. That's at the start. You can spend the insight to, after performing a successful complex action, spend an insight to add an additional success to the action. Before performing a complex action or reaction, you can spend an insight to perform the action with advantage. How advantage works in this game is you add an extra die to your hand, I believe. I believe it's to your hand and not your die pool. Yeah, you add an additional die to your hand of dice before rolling, and after you're rolling, you remove the one die with the lowest result from the results. So, kind of like advantage in D&D, where you roll 2 dice, take the better result. This is basically the same thing, except you could be rolling more than 2 dice. You could only be rolling 1 die. Or, no, you'd be rolling 2 dice at minimum, but you know what I mean. And you can also spend an insight to gain a clue from the GM about an investigation or puzzle. You can spend an insight to introduce a narrative element into an ongoing scene. Very similar to Star Wars, when you can spend a destiny point to add a narrative element to the scene. You can also spend an insight to avoid triggering the negative side of your personality when you suffer a trauma that normally triggers it. You can also permanently decrease your insight limit by 2 to avoid permanent character death. So yeah, that's very powerful. Very, very powerful. So. Knacks, I think I explained. They're basically like talents, weapons. Some of them will have ammunition. Some of them will, some of them have ammunition, range, based on skill, but damage. There's injury rating. If you roll enough successes to trigger the injury rating, you can cause an injury on another character. So that's why that's important. So that's where the number of successes kind of comes into play. So, first thing they want you to do is determine your background. So that's going to be basically all this stuff. Are you a local or a visitor to Arkham? Or wherever you're going to set this. Usually Arkham, but, you know, if you could probably, I think with how this is set up, you actually probably could, this can be you could set it pretty much anywhere, and honestly any time. I don't think any of these necessarily are against another time period. The weapons all would, you know, you'd have to change them, but I think you could do it fairly easily. Which is why I think that this system they're planning on making, you know, apply to different eras and everything. Heck, that could be their plan for future books, is like setting it in different eras, because that was the thing in Call of Cthulhu. You have Cthulhu Invictus, I think, which is basically Call of Cthulhu, but now you're in Roman times, or Cthulhu Dark Ages, where now you're in the Dark Ages, obviously. There's Cthulhu, there's a book called Corsairs of Cthulhu that sets it during the Age of Piracy. You've got, I think it's Cthulhu by Gaslight, which is basically like Victorian era. Yeah, you can do a lot, and I don't think any of these skills would go against it. Again, you'd mostly just have to be messing around with weapon stats. So I think that could be an interesting take. I'll be looking into that. But again, local or visitor. You know, if you're local, then you're going to need to familiarize yourself with the place your character was born and raised in. You'll know a lot of the secrets and rumors. And if you're a visitor, don't know too much, because otherwise it doesn't make sense why you're here. It also means you're starting out with a clean slate, you don't have any enemies or grudges to contend with, and you're free to make a good or bad first impression with everyone you meet. So, you know, find out about your family and friends. Fill that information in. How does your character make a living? And then the GM can find your weekly salary, and you can use that to kind of figure things out. And then they also, they have broad categories of jobs. Basically for the various different kinds of they have 4 categories: poor, middle class, prosperous, and criminal. Those are your 4 job categories, basically. And then they ask, what was your character's first brush with the supernatural? Which they say you can just put this: NA. You haven't actually had a brush with the supernatural before. Yeah. Now, here comes the big part where we start getting into, this is where we're going to start getting into mechanics a bit more. Right now, I've kind of got, like, this is mostly, like, backstory, stuff that's gonna, like, help define your character when you're role-playing as them, their back, and all that stuff. Personality trait not only affects like how your character is going to act, it's also going to have some mechanical stuff. There are 3 main elements. There is the personality trait itself. basically just like, I'll use an example. Let's just do analytical, because we're kind of analyzing the game right now. Basically, you're calculating. You have a calculating mind. Logic's is your key strength. You can become cold and impersonal if you don't work to retain your humanity. When you're applied positive, obviously analysis can be very valuable. You can get strengths and weaknesses, determine the most logical choice that will help you succeed. And you can maybe make an honest assessment of these weird things. However, when confronted by something that truly defies your analysis, your mind might crumble violently and suddenly. The next element is the positive side. This represents your character's personality at its best and is linked to a unique way to spend insight. So each personality trait has a positive that you can spend your insight on. So for example, if you're analytical, after performing an action, you can spend an insight to discard one horror die that generated a result of 1 from your die pool. You really don't want 1s on your horror die pool because those generate traumas, which have the potential to cause bad effects to happen to your character that are not easily lost, and in fact, if too many of them stack up, you might even lose control of your character entirely. Your character might have not been able to handle the horrors that they've seen and maybe even embraced them. They might become the next cultist your next character might have to deal with, which I always like that idea. It's kind of harkens back to Star Wars Saga Edition, where in Star Wars Saga Edition, if your dark side score ever like equaled your wisdom score, I think it was like wisdom score, not wisdom modifier, your character was now dark, and in general you're expected to be heroic. So when your character went fully dark, that character was gone, was no longer under control of the player. They were now the villain that maybe your characters would redeem, maybe they'd have to destroy them, who knows. So, yeah, I like that idea. I know that is not necessarily everyone's cup of tea, but if that's not, you don't necessarily have to do that. You can do something else. You can basically be like you can have the character like basically just be like, they're now in a state where they cannot help for a while, and maybe that's or you can just toss that out. You can toss out that result where they're just completely out of the game, if you would like. So the next part is the negative side. This represents how the personality trait affects your character when they succumb to their baser instincts. It is linked to a unique penalty your character may experience when they suffer a trauma. Some traumas have an effect that says, trigger the negative side of your personality trait. Each personality trait listed includes information on what happens when its negative side is triggered. So, for analytical, the negative side is when triggered, you must roll twice on the trauma table whenever you suffer a trauma and take the higher of the 2 results, and this lasts until the end of the current session. So, we'll call that disadvantage on trauma, on roll to determine trauma. Okay, not enough room to determine trauma. There we go. Positive is spend insight to discard horror die with 1. So, this can be done to protect your character from suffering a trauma or reduce the potential severity of a trauma if they rolled a 1 on multiple horror dice, because each 1 you roll on the horror dice amps up the trauma. So, yeah, at your best, you can kind of analyze away some of this. Like, you're able to logic it, like, I think logic it away is, like, the most basic way to describe it. I think a better way would be, you're able to use your logic to somewhat justify the weirdness. You know, it doesn't entirely defy your, like, you're able to find a loophole. You're able to find a way to explain this so that it doesn't break your brain. Because that's kind of the idea, I think, of cosmic horror sometimes that gets lost, is it's not, oh, big scary monster. It's supposed to be what you're looking at or witnessing defies everything you know about how the world works. So if you go with that explanation, I would, which is my preferred thing, is like, then this works really well. You have a bunch of different ones. This is just an example I want to give. You can have, there's thrifty, stubborn, reserved, selfless, outgoing, cautious, imaginative. There's all this stuff. I'm not going to go into extreme detail on it because, you know, again, if you want it, you can get the book. Also, one thing I want to mention that I really like that Edge Studios has been doing with, especially their Genesis books, is if you buy the book in the store, the physical book, it comes with a code on DriveThruRPG where you can get the book, the PDF, for free. And I love that. Everyone needs, every RPG publisher, I think, should be doing that. At least in my opinion, I think it helps a lot. So, anyway, next step is to choose an archetype. This is basically your class in, like Dungeons and Dragons or things like that. So, an option would be adventurer, kind of like Indiana Jones, or like an example they give is like a sea captain. You have the believer, where, you know, you could be a religious scholar, you know, priests, etc. It doesn't have to be religious, it can be other beliefs. You just believe in something greater than yourself. Guardian. I think everyone knows what a guardian is. You're a protector. You want to protect people. You have the hunter. They hunt things. They hunt people. They can hunt people. They can hunt monsters. They can hunt just random creatures. You have mystics who kind of know how they either have received access to power, or like through birth, or by learning things. You have the rogue, which is, again, I don't feel I need to explain too much about rogues. You know, thieves, someone who's not really, like, within the law. Necessarily within the law, who has, like, various, like, sneaky stuff they can do. You have the seeker, who they seek answers. I'm basically just reading, like, the first sentence of what they describe the survivor, or what they describe the archetype. So, survivor manages to make it, is the character that manages to make it out of any unpleasant, dangerous, or deadly situations they find themselves in. So, each one has, you have skills that you are allowed to raise up to 3+, and then one that you're allowed to raise up to 2+, and then they have a list of knacks that are available to them. As you can see here with knacks, you get 3 tier 1 knacks, 2 tier 2s, 2 tier 3s, and 1 tier 4. That is it. So, you gotta kind of think a little bit ahead about what kind of character you're wanting to make, because you're not gonna have that many options. Like, it's already, you have like a huge list of knacks, and then you gotta limit it even more to what you have to be kind of strategic as well about what you're picking. And I believe to get a, like, tier 2 knack, you need at least a tier 1 knack. So, determine starting skill levels. Well, let's pick I'll pick, my favorite one is the Seeker, because I like detectives, and a detective, I think, is a great example of a Seeker, because they seek, Because a seeker can seek the truth, which is what at least most like detectives do. Like they're seeking the truth behind a crime. So that means I may spend experience points to improve my lore, ranged combat, and wit skill to a skill level of up to 3+. And I can also improve my knowledge skill to a skill level up to 2+. And I have a list of knacks. Some knacks are specifically for your archetype, and then there's a lot of general knacks that can be picked up that are can be picked up by pretty much any archetype. So, anyway, back to determine starting skill levels. Everything starts at 6+. Cool. Now you need to choose 3 to improve to 5+, and then 1 skill to improve to 4+. And you don't spend any XP for this. So, let's see. We're going to change that to a 5. You know, since knowledge is the one that can go up to 2+, we're going to do 4+ here. And then 2 more 5+. Let's do resolve. And let's do... We're going to do intuition. Okay. Next, select starting equipment and character advancements. So, your character will start with 1 tier 1 knack for free, $50 worth of gear, and an insight limit of 1. So, 1 tier 1 knack for the Seeker. Got a lot of options here. I think I'm going to go with... Let's see, do I want to go with one? I'll go with one specifically for the Seeker, and it will be Brilliant Insight. What that does is when your character performs a complex action using knowledge or lore, for clarification in case I forgot it at the beginning, complex action is any action that requires you to actually roll the die and use the result. A simple action is one where you just remove a die and say, I am doing this. If they roll 2 or more results of 6, your character or one ally within earshot may immediately regain 1 insight to a maximum of their insight limit. So that could be pretty helpful. That could be very helpful. If somebody needs some insight restored to them, you can do that. $50 worth of gear. I'm not going to go too much into gear. I will say they have... It's beyond just like pistol. There are many different kinds of pistols, shotguns, various melee weapons. It's not as basic as, to use an example from my Expanse solo series. You know, it's very much just pistol. It's not... There's not much beyond it. Obviously, I can, like, come up with, like, more... I could come up with, like, models and everything like that, but sometimes it's nice to be able to say, for example, like a Smith & Wesson, whatever. Now, your character gets to choose one of the 3 following options. An additional $100 worth of gear, so you can have $150, and if you don't spend all the money, then you have the rest in cash. So, $150, you could get some pretty good stuff. You could get 5 experience points, which means, oh, you can now improve your skills. You could get a knack. You could get another tier 1 knack. And then raise another one of your things from 6 to 5. One of your skills from 6+ to 5+, sorry. Yeah. It's interesting. You don't get a lot of experience points, but you also don't need too much to get some good stuff going. Or you could get an increased insight limit of 2, which I think actually that's the one I'm going to go with. So. And you can increase your insight limit through gameplay. If something memorable or momentous happens to your character, at the end of that session, you can spend 1 XP to permanently increase your insight limit by 1. There are a couple of examples to give of something that could give you the opportunity to increase your insight limit. You end an encounter with all dice in your dice pool replaced with horror dice. So, if your dice pool looked like this, at the end of a session, boom, you can spend 1 XP to bump up your insight limit. If you face something dark and terrible from your past that's returned to haunt you, you can spend an XP. If you suffer an injury with severity 4 or greater, if you bring an element of your background into play, if you fail so terribly at a task that you put yourself or the entire group at risk, you can spend an XP to improve your insight. The only limit is you can only increase it by one after a session. So if multiples of these happened, like if for some reason 5 different things of these, you can only increase your insight limit by 1. And also, your insight limit cannot be higher than 10. So, yeah. Also, it's interesting kind of seeing the, like, 1920s money, like, affordable clothing being $6, a camera being $23.40, a magnifying glass is 50 cents. There's some pretty cool stuff in here. And there's various cool things, like it also says, like, 20 cents per glass of beer. 10 cents a glass of moonshine. 25 cents for a movie ticket. And they have relics, which you can't buy. Those are, like, you have to find them and things like that. And tomes are the same way. And then they kind of go into the description of Arkham, the surrounding areas, various locals that you could run into, story hooks, all sorts of cool things. If you're also interested in a bit of more background information and you don't want to look up on Wikipedia. Yeah. There's a lot of really cool stuff. I highly recommend, if this at all sounds interesting to you, maybe pick it up if you've got the means to and you have an interest in it. I recommend it. I haven't been able to run or play this, but I'm definitely interested. I've actually been wondering if I can figure out how to run this solo, because I can't use Foundry, obviously, but, yeah, I think I'm really interested in this game. Let's see. I do want to apologize. I probably should have done this at the start of the video, but I want to apologize for how long it's taken me to upload. I want to apologize for not uploading for quite a few weeks. It's been a combination of being busy and me just kind of having trouble motivating myself to do the Expanse RPG. I'm wondering if I might need to take a little bit of a break from it, run something else for y'all. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Feel free to give me suggestions on what you would like to see. I'm not wanting to stop entirely doing the Expanse RPG. I don't know. I feel like I need like an inspiration or motivation or of some kind to come back to it. But thank you all for watching / listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was a good kind of primer on how this system works, and hopefully it's, got you thinking. Even if, again, one thing that I think I've said before is I really like getting new systems, and I like kind of seeing what they do. And this dice pool system is very fascinating to me. I find it very interesting. I've never heard of a system like this before. I've talked to some people who said they've heard of a system similar to this, but I don't think they ever told me what system it was similar to. But when I heard it, I was like, oh, that's a very interesting system, having your health and your actions all tied to the number of dice you can roll. So yeah, thank you all for listening or watching, and I hope y'all have a great day. Bye.